Last week we started talking about the idea of humility and how it can be this sort of idea that we hear about and maybe we understand the definition of, but doing it can be a little more difficult because it's a little harder to understand. That being obedient, being a person, humble, being a person who's humble to the degree that their actions and their behaviors and their character are displayed to those around them, and then those around them would say, so-and-so is really humble. And maybe look at that person and go, that person has something that I don't think I have. Does that person go to church? Is that one of those Jesus people? That the humility that we walk in, that we're called to walk in, the humility that was so a complete part of Jesus, and while Jesus lives in us, how is he being displayed to those around us in humility? It's kind of a tough subject. So it seemed to make sense to talk about it the best we can. So last week we talked about the idea that one way that we can work on our humility is by getting low. We talked about serving others and being empty, so that the more empty we are, the more space, I guess, that we have for God to pour out His Spirit on us, and we would be more full than we would otherwise. And then there'd be more of Him displayed, so people wouldn't necessarily see as much of us, they'd see more of Him. And that would display humility. Even the idea of deciding, I'm going to serve people. That's a humble idea. And so we do that. The idea of emptying ourselves of maybe the stuff that I have, that I'm carrying around, the stuff I believe, my opinions, my ideas, maybe they're not all that great. Maybe they're not all that helpful. You might look in the mirror some mornings and just go, you know what? I don't know if my life is going all that well. Well, to some degree, some of that is we're responsible for that. We look back in the mirror and we go, you know what? Maybe what I think is important is what got me here. What got me to whatever relationships I have. What got me to what I think is really important. Now I know that in this room we've got lots of different stories, and some of those things are beyond our control. But at this day, like for instance, let's just say tomorrow, when we look in the mirror, there are different things we can do so that tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow doesn't creep in this petty pace from day to day. If anybody gets that, you are awesome. But that we would move forward. Everybody here has a chance to move forward starting right now. And you can make a completely different tomorrow. There are parts of my yesterday that are not good. I'm thinking that most of the room would be surprised. But my today is very different, and it didn't happen on accident. It happened because one of the decisions I made was to follow Jesus with all my heart and all my soul and all my strength. And humility is a big part of that. So we're going to continue on that today by talking about two more ideas. So there was the getting interested last week, and then I mentioned we were going to do two more this week, to be interested, be serving, and be obedient. So today we're going to talk about be serving and being obedient. Part of the reason that this is a difficult topic, humility, is because we see so few examples in social media. We see so few examples in television and movies and music. I mean, part of what people go into those industries for is so they can pretend there's somebody else, and that somebody else can be know-it-all and not have problems or be able to overcome them with, overcome incredible difficulties. But that's not really real. And a lot of those people you see, they're not humble, and yet we look to them. Sports figures, athletes, all of that, we look to them like they're the standard, and there's so little humility there. So we veer away from following humble people, and we tend to follow those who seem confident and know it all. So This week, I'm hoping that we start digging deeper into this and can partner with God to find our way toward being more practically humble. So today we're going to start in John 13. This is verse 3 through 5. It says, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, he tied it around his waist, and then he poured water into a basin, like a big, tub sort of thing, a big bowl, and he began to wash the disciples' feet. And then he wiped them with the towel that was wrapped around his waist. So our first focus is to be serving, but the context of this is important. It said, Jesus, knowing that he had come from God and was going back to God, what that's telling us is, Jesus is remembering, I was sitting at the right hand of the Father, all powerful, all knowing, no needs. And because he knew that, he came and served those around him. Because he was king, he remembered that and thought, what that means is I need to show them not how to rule over people, not how to just bark out commands and get my way, but how to get low, get empty, and come in and serve others. And maybe the most humble way that he could have done that was to take off his outer garments, which to a large degree at that time showed everyone around you your status. He took those off, gets down on his hands and knees, and remember, it wouldn't be great if we did it in here, considering some of the feet that are in this room, mine included, but we've got shoes on, and our shoes are all in pretty good shape here. And then underneath that, probably some socks that are in pretty good shape there. But imagine if you walked around and all you ever walked around in was sandals, and everywhere you went there was no pavement. You're just walking in the dirt all the time. And you don't just get to go home and take a shower. There's no running water. There's no shower. What are those feet like? Those feet are not like our feet. And so Jesus gets down there, starts scrubbing those feet of those 11 other guys. Or maybe it's 12 at that point. That's coming in pretty low. That's leaving behind what we think we deserve, all that list of things we don't think we should be asked to do, because it's below us. So to some degree, finding that base of humility is thinking to yourself, you know what? I'm not going to do that. You can't ask me to do that, because what we're saying is, that's below me. Well, whatever that line is, you got to find a way under it. When we're serving other people, when we're loving other people, when we're listening to God and following his call, there's nothing too low. And sometimes us finding that spot, like we talked about last week, is when people around us notice, wow, they really care about me. They really value me because they came in lower than anybody else around me. They came in when it was most important. So our first focus is to be serving, just like Jesus when he gives us that example. Philippians, we talked about this briefly last week. I'm going to just expand on it slightly. Philippians 2:7 says, he, Jesus, gave up his divine privileges and he took the humble position of a slave. In the ESV, that's the NLT. In the ESV, the English Standard Version, it says, he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant. So when we talk about the idea of serving other people, that's just the easiest way for us to empty ourselves. Because it can be difficult to go, well, empty myself. Cameron, I'm not really sure what you're talking about. What do I get rid of? And what do I do? Stand on my head? Do a handstand? Does it only work when I'm sick enough to get rid of what's inside me so I'm emptier? Do I starve myself? What is it? How do I get empty? Well, this is how you do it. Serving other people works that out of you. Suddenly you're not thinking, well, you know what? I don't deserve this. And if we do, then God gets to deal with our heart. But that's what it brings out on us, serving. Taking the form of a servant is how we get empty. Get low and get empty. So we do that by serving others, which is the practice that most aligns us with the way that Jesus lived. I mean, you read all of those stories, and you can see, I mean, it might sound kind of glamorous that Jesus has got this entourage, and he's traveling, and the focus is largely on him the whole time. But recognize, too, that there are times where it says, and then he needed to get away, or that he was completely overwhelmed to the point where he was sweating blood. His call is overwhelming. So to continue in it for the benefit of others is serving them. He was serving them the whole time. He was serving them by traveling. He was serving them by walking from town to town so he could serve others in the next time. He was serving them by healing them. He was serving them by speaking to them and teaching them. He was always serving. So when we can follow him, that is the practice that most aligns us with the way he lived. It also keeps us aware of what we're truly full of when we serve others. We know what's really in here, because if we react poorly to the idea of serving others, the likelihood is that we're not filled with love. The likelihood isn't that we're completely filled with his Spirit. So when I talked last week about the idea that when we get empty, we have a possibility of being more filled to some degree, well, this is kind of that, because that's when we know, wow, I thought I was full of God. I thought I was full of his Spirit. What I'm full of is a little bit stinky. My thoughts aren't good right now while I'm serving other people. It's how we figure that out. Matthew 20, starting in verse 26, says this. This is Jesus speaking. He says, he's talking to those closest to him, the ones he's been training. He says, among you it is going to be different. Because whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man, he's talking about himself, Jesus talking about himself, did not come to be served, but to serve others, and to actually give his life as a ransom for many. So one of the things he's saying there is, be last. Be last. Be the very last. I remember when I was wrestling with this years ago, and I thought, I think I'm pretty, I like to be last. I'm good with that. I like the idea. I mean, you go to like a store or something like that still has doors that you have to pull open, and you like see other people kind of coming behind you, and you stop and you hold the door for them a little bit and they come in. But then what happens sometimes, you ever had this happen? You hold the door open because maybe you see somebody coming who's, I don't know, has a walker or in a wheelchair, or they have a stroller, or they're carrying a kid on their hip and they're trying to do two things, and you're like, you can't possibly open the door. And you get the door for them. You feel pretty good about yourself. So then that person goes in, oh, thank you. They're real grateful. Oh, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. It's no problem. It's my pleasure. And then they go on in, and then there's somebody right behind them that you didn't quite see, and they go in, and you didn't really mean to hold the door for them. And they come through and they go, oh, thank you. And you go, that's all right. But while you're saying it's all right to them, you look back, and now there's a line of about 7 people, and they're all just walking past you, and they don't even look at you. And now you're thinking, you think I'm here just to hold the door for you? I went from being helpful to being, I don't know, a doorstop, to being invisible. Hey, you're welcome. Oh, wait. And what I figured out was this. I'm okay with not being first. I don't like being last. And I think that's true of most of us. I think the ones among us who might be the most servant-hearted, we're willing to serve. I see a lot of you do it all the time. Serving in the dining hall, serving around the property. I see it happening. I don't know anybody that is really okay with being absolute last consistently. Anybody okay being the last person standing in the line where they're picking teams? You guys are okay with that? Like, I'm the last one being chosen. Oh, well, good for you. That's great. Well, you guys can be the example then. Because I know for me, if I'm the last one standing there and they're picking teams and they're like, I'll take you, and I'll take you, and I'll take this one, I'll take this one. And captains are picking teams and the line is dwindling and it's coming down between me and a few people, I'm thinking, please, Lord, if I've ever found favor in your eyes, don't let me be last. Because what? When you're last, what do they say? They say, oh, come on, we pick you. No, you didn't. You got stuck with me. Right? That's what we say. Not very many people like to be last. So when Jesus tells us, if you want to be first in the kingdom of heaven, if you want to be the most humble person in the room, be very last. It really is going to take some work. But that's one way that we can do it. It's one way that we can measure and know that we're doing it. The other thing that makes this difficult is I couldn't find any example in the Bible where the idea of humility was accomplished alone. And so if we're alone, we need other people to help us work out humility in our lives. So we need other people to be able to serve on occasion. We need other people that we can do things for and we can support and we can carry their burdens and we can come alongside and help them on occasion. But to try to do humility alone, I just don't see it anywhere. So we need each other and we need to serve each other. We may try to set a noble goal to humble ourselves before God, but humbling ourselves by serving others may be the only earthly evidence that our humility before God is real. We might be somebody who is okay praying, okay worshiping, okay doing our devotions, but there's the possibility that we can, I hate to use this word, but kind of pretend it. We can fake it for God. It's not really tested because, again, we're alone a lot of that time. So when we're serving others, it's evidence. It's evidence of humility. We could fake that too, but not for very long. So one is be serving. The other for today is be obedient. Be obedient. Y'all, be obedient. That word alone, right? Just hearing somebody say that is like, ooh, you're being disobedient. Ooh. It's kind of an ugly, it's a harsh word, isn't it? You know why, I think? It's harsh because it's clear. You're either obedient or you're not. It's very black and white. It's very stark. There's a line. You did it or you didn't. And we like to go, well, I kind of did it. I did part of it. I did part of it before anybody else did. But did you do it? Well, I didn't do the whole thing. I didn't do it right when I was asked. See, we want some wiggle room. We want to be able to spin the case. Philippians 2:8 says, He, Jesus, humbled himself in obedience to God. One of my mentors likes to say, in Churchville, we fool ourselves into thinking we're obedient because much of the time we were going to do those things anyway. We already agreed with the idea. It becomes real obedience when we don't really want to do it or we weren't going to do it and we feel like God is asking us to do it. That's when it becomes actual obedience. Obedience says, I'll do what you ask whether or not I like the idea. Right? See, that's the issue. Even when we're being obedient, we don't like that word because if somebody asks us to do something, our first thought is, I don't know. Let me think about it. I'm not sure if I want to do it. I'll get back to you. That's not obedience. Delayed obedience is not obedience. Obedience says, I'll do what you ask whether I like the idea or not. And so when we come before God and we say, Lord, I want better for my life. I want you to lead. I want you to be Lord. Rescue me, Lord. All of that is a long-winded way of saying, I will do what you say, whether I like the idea or not. And that's the only way it works. So we get low and we get empty in obedience by being just like Jesus and honoring God by acknowledging He knows better. That's how we honor God. By when he brings up an idea, our first thought is, well, it's coming from you. It's got to be better than my idea. It's coming from you. I should probably do that instead of what I was thinking of doing. Jesus, it's coming from you. I'm reading it in your word, so it should be a priority for me. And that's what Jesus did. He honored God by recognizing that God, the Father, is high above us, high and lifted up. His ways are high above our ways. And because it's high and above us, we're already low. See, obedience is actually kind of an easier way than serving to be humble. Because if you just recognize that he's smarter and wiser, he knows all, he's already seen it, then you don't have to get low in any other way. Just recognize that he's above you. Now, walking that out can be difficult. Because a lot of times what it means is the way that we get empty is by saying that the things we used to think and the things we used to believe and the things we used to do are not good. Or not as good, at the very least. So we get empty by repenting, by changing our minds when we are encountering God. When he comes to us, when we worship him and we sense something in our spirit, I feel like I need to stop doing that one thing. You know what, Lord, I'm sorry I did that. I'm not going to do that anymore. That's getting empty. That's humbling ourselves. Your ways are better, Lord. We were singing that last night. Your ways better. So we get rid of what we've collected and valued and thought was important that wasn't from God. Then he fills us and we respond in obedience. So part of humility is emptying ourselves of bad stuff. James 1:21 says, so, it's like, since you've come to this point and you really want to know what humility is, so get rid of all the filth and evil in your lives and humbly, there it is, humbly accept the word God has planted in your hearts, for it has the power to save your soul. Many times, we know which things in our lives are bad for us. It could be media like TV shows, music, movies, video games. It could be things we put in our bodies, such as certain foods or drugs or drinks. But James is encouraging us to empty ourselves while admitting that God knows better than we do what is best for us, which is humbling. He also tells us we can use the Word of God to help us see which things are bad and need to go. Because I'll tell you what, if you'll start with the bad stuff, because the bad stuff is what we're talking about, it's harmful stuff. It's the poison. It's the difficult stuff. You start with the easy to spot stuff. I mean, if we all just were right now, even if you weren't going to go through with it and you knew you had to start following God today, I don't know, we thought the world's going to end tonight, I don't know. And you were like, okay, I've got to do some things different. Everybody in this room can think of a few things that immediately you'd be like, okay, I got to stop doing that right now. Because you know some of the bad stuff. But what's going to happen is over time, Paul says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Over time, you're going to go, okay, this bad stuff has to go. Now I'm good. And then you go through life and you go, oh, wait a second. You know what? This stuff needs to go too. And after you do that for a little bit, what you're going to come up with, you're going to go, well, now I'm okay because all the rest that's left here, it's all good stuff. And then God is going to say, hey, I want you to give that up too. And you're going to go, what? I don't get it. Because just because it's not bad doesn't mean it's what God has for us. Doesn't mean it doesn't still distract us. We can be distracted by good things. We can be taken off the path of what God has that's best for us with a lot of good things. Like things that just don't give us any benefit, like entertainment or stuff that just fills our time. So we can use the Word of God to help divide those things. Word of God is living and active, can penetrate between soul and spirit. That's how we use that. And that's what James is saying here. He says, accept the word because it has the power to save your soul. It has the power to help us be rescued from these things, the bad stuff, and even the not so good stuff. Lastly, what James doesn't exactly say here, oh, right, and also that's our memory challenge for the week, if you didn't catch that. So that's the one that we'll need to memorize for next week. So what James doesn't actually completely say here explicitly is the Word of God can also help you determine which things in your life should be set aside even though they aren't bad. Matthew 11:29 says, this is Jesus speaking again, he says, take my yoke upon you, let me teach you. Let me teach you. Jesus is saying, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart. And if you'll do that, you'll find rest in here. You'll find rest for your souls. What that says to me is that if I find my brain just swirling and I just don't feel like I'm at peace and I've got anxiety and I'm worrying about so many things, that if I'll be humble and obedient and allow Jesus to teach me, that will go away. He'll show me which things need to go. He'll show me what things I need to put in. He'll show me what things I need to focus on. He'll show me what I should be doing with my morning, what I should do with my afternoon, what I should do with my day, what I should do with my month, what I should do with my life. And I'll stop worrying about a bunch of stuff that isn't going to matter anyway, or that is going to matter because it's ruining my life. Good things can also keep you from the better things that God has for you and for those around you. Matthew 18:4 says, anyone who becomes as humble as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So being as humble as a child means going back to a time when you hadn't yet decided that you know it all. Got to go back to a time where you knew you didn't know it all. Children are open, willing to listen, willing to trust, for the most part, more so than later. As we grow older, we naturally start to form opinions, and not all of our opinions are godly. And we are more like a child when we set aside all we think we know, and our interactions with God can reveal a heart to follow Him in obedience. Zephaniah, you don't hear that name very often, huh? Zephaniah 2:3 says, seek the Lord, all who are humble, follow His commands, seek to do what is right and to live humbly. It takes humility to be continually corrected. Nobody likes that, right? Probably had times where you're thinking like, but you're always telling me I'm wrong. Don't I ever do anything right? It takes humility to be continually corrected. It also takes being continually corrected to consistently grow. And it takes consistent growth to be healthy. Nobody likes to be continually corrected, so they don't consistently grow, and so they aren't healthy. But by humbling ourselves and admitting we're wrong, that can be exhausting, but it is completely worth it. Remember where we started last week, James 4:6. God gives grace generously. He opposes the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. And a couple verses later, humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up in honor. So as we wrap up, if it sounds, over these last 2 weeks, if it sounds like I said to you that you can establish humility in your life, let me be clear. You can take steps to partner with God, but He does the work. That's what we're talking about here. The whole point is to rely even more on God. We take all of these steps to empty ourselves of everything that we filled ourselves with that is not good and everything we believe is good. And that's when God fills us and we reveal Jesus, who is the only one truly humble.